So scaling is not the same as growth. Scaling your business means that you are able to handle an increase in sales, work, hiring, output, overhead costs in a cost-effective and slow-growing manner.
I love bookkeeping.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode out every Tuesday and Thursday. Today, we're going to be expanding on our introductory episode to scaling your business. And today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into scaling versus growing your business, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to growing your business versus scaling to succeed. And that's what we're really going to be taking a deep dive into today. Melissa, so fun fact, guys, I didn't give Melissa a whole lot of context for this episode because I wanted to ask her a lot of questions because I feel like she is the person to ask this about. But so was there a point when you took over Daniel's business where you realized that you needed to scale and you kind of didn't know where or how to start? Or did it naturally come to you of what needed to happen next?
Like the audacity that I have to say this, but I knew exactly what I was doing.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I think that's the crazy thing is I did not have to scale the business. So the idea was that I was going to step in as CEO and just make sure that I didn't mess it up.
Right.
I was like, just try to keep it steady. But, I was like, no, I'm going to double it before you get back. And I knew exactly how to do that. And for me, it was just like, okay, if I need to get an additional $20,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and our average client is this size, that's this many clients. If it's this many clients and my close rate is this percentage, then I need this many free consultations a month. So, breaking it down, like figure out what your goals are and then breaking it down into just like actionable steps that you take. And then how do I get those leads? Okay, I'm going to get those leads by doing maybe Google ads, by building referral relationships, by, whatever it is that you're going to do. And so that's every time we go to scale the business, what is our goal? What is the destination? And then we work it backwards for, okay, what do we need to do to get there? And then we just work through those steps.
Ooh, I like that. What's the destination and work backwards?
Yes.
So something that I think I kind of wanted to break down today is scaling versus growth. And something that we want everybody to understand here, because I did a little research before this. So scaling is not the same as growth. Scaling your business means that you are able to handle an increase in sales, work, hiring, output, overhead costs in a cost-effective and slow-growing manner. Basically, scaling is when you have the income, you have the money in the bank, and you need to find ways to effectively and reasonably expand your company, versus growth is maybe adding things to your business that maybe are needed and maybe not now. Maybe you ran before you walked. So today I kind of want to take a deep dive into scaling your business effectively and not growing your business, because I think I kind of I want people to understand the, I guess, negative effects of trying to grow your business without making a certain aspect of it suffer. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I've always thought like that, I guess I didn't know the difference. And I always thought that we were scaling our business, but then you said something about being calculated. And at the time, it did not feel so, it felt a little out of control. It felt a little bit more like we were growing it. I definitely know going into this next round, we're scaling. It's definitely very calculated. It's very, measured. But I think that probably what's happening to a lot of people, and a lot of the pain points that I've heard from people in the Bookkeeper Elite community is that the growth was just hard and they had to recover afterwards because of all of the pain that came with it.
Right. So today I kind of want to take a deep dive into truly scaling your business, which means to me, it means expanding without any part of it suffering because it's extremely calculated and it's done kind of slow and steady versus fast. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh shit, like,
yeah, don't do
this
that.
aspect of the business is suffering right now because of this part. So I guess when you had Daniel's business, when you first took it over and it was time to scale/grow, what was the first area that you scaled your business? Or what's the first area that you saw, okay, I need more of this?
The first thing I did is we switched from a subcontractor model to an employee-based model. It was really important to me that I established a core team and that I would have the support of that core team before we were going to scale.
Yeah. Did you have the money to hire?
We did. We did already have some subcontractors. And so what I did was a huge, like a quality control overhaul, definitely put every account we had to a QC test. And if a subcontractor failed that test, we let them go. I wasn't in a place where I had the time to develop contractors. I felt like if they had been with us long enough, if they had our processes and they weren't following our processes, me saying, hey, can you follow our processes wasn't going to change that. So we just went ahead and I just cleared them all out, started hiring for some new subcontractors, and then took the amazing subcontractors that we had, offered them if they wanted to stay on board as a subcontractor, if they wanted to move to employee, and just really had conversations with everybody. We didn't have a lot of money to hire quickly. So that was something where I had, okay, when we get to this revenue, this is when we can hire. When we get to this revenue, this is where we can hire. But we did have to do an overhaul of who we currently had.
And I think I'm going to probably circle back this entire conversation to what you said about working backwards, because I think that's I think people tend to set goals when they want to scale their business and work forward. And really, I think it's better to work backwards and be able to identify the milestones that you need to scale your business. Can you give an example of a milestone that you set for yourself in your business that you knew you needed to hit in order to add something? I'm hitting you with the hard questions today.
I know. Back in the beginning, I don't know. A lot of times because I'm so sales focused, a lot of times I go off of like revenue. Like when we hit revenue, this, hiring this will make sense because we need that person by the time we get to this next revenue. And that will give us, if we're increasing revenue by this amount, that'll be about 3 months. And 3 months is how much time I need to train that person, that type of thing.
So revenue was your milestone, correct?
Yeah, I would say 99% of the time, revenue or number of clients. But right now, those kind of correspond. In the beginning, we were a little bit more focused on number of clients than I think we should have been because, quantity is not better than quality. But yeah, for me, primarily, I go off of revenue because I go off of my budget and my budget projections.
Was there, when you were scaling your business, take a shot every time I say scale, were there ways, because I know that you and I talk about sometimes our mind jumps to like the worst possible scenario. Were there risks in your head that were kind of flashing at you when it was time to maybe hire more employees or switch to a different business model? How do you kind of overcome the risks in your head and avoid them from unfolding?
Yeah, I try to have contingency plans where it's like, okay, if this terrible thing happens, then this. If this terrible thing happens, then that. The only time I really panicked was COVID, when COVID first hit, because I really didn't know how it would affect anybody at the time, because you're shutting down an entire economy. And we have service businesses that have to go into people's homes. And they couldn't leave their own home, let alone enter somebody else's. And there were a lot of clients that were stuck in areas where they were shut down for months. And so I really didn't know how it was going to affect the trades. Now, obviously, now we see that the trades just honestly skyrocketed. Apparently, when people are stuck at home, all they want to do is renovate their house. But it was really stressful for a little bit. And so I had contingency plans. Okay, if we drop to this in revenue, if we drop to that in revenue, and it's a shitty thing to hear, but it's like, okay, who are we going to let go first? How can we cut costs before we let these people go? Can we reduce their hours rather than let them go altogether? Or is it in their best interest for us to let them go so that they can, collect unemployment? Having conversations with people about what it's going to look like. Luckily, we never had to do any of that. I think we lost one client because of COVID. Everybody else, I got a lot of great feedback. It was really nice that I have one from one of our clients, Matthew, and he said, I just wanted to thank you guys because it's because of you that I'm in the financial position to withstand this, because you guys have taught me about cash flow, because you guys have always prepared me for slow season during the winter. I have enough savings in the bank to cover this, not to let any of my guys go. And, that was because of you. So that was primarily the feedback that we got there.
Today's show is brought to you by Keeper, the one app to run your bookkeeping business. Keeper helps you get faster client responses with your own custom branded QuickBooks integrated client portal. Finally, you can say goodbye to those pesky spreadsheets full of uncategorized transactions. Keeper also helps you catch those embarrassing coding errors before your clients do. And with Keeper, you can generate beautiful custom reports that your clients will absolutely love to read. To find out more, go to keeper.app. That's keeper.app. Mention I Love Bookkeeping to get 20% off your first 3 months. Again, go to keeper.app to find out more. Thank you for listening.
Can you tell me maybe about some of the ways that you scaled your business in order to accommodate all of your clients? And the reason why I say all of your clients, if you guys are listening, you don't know, Melissa has over 100 clients. So I don't know I don't even know how I can't even wrap my mind around that many bookkeeping clients. Like I forget how to speak. But what are some ways that you scaled your business in order to accommodate? Because I think that's a big pain point of bookkeepers is that they get to a point where they have so many clients that it becomes overwhelming for them. And that's when people start to slip. So how are some ways that you kind of kept a tight ship with so many clients?
I'd like to say that we did all the time, but I can definitely tell you that we messed up a few times. And it wasn't always, calculated. Like I said, there was definitely some periods where it was definitely growth and not scaling. But we've always had, organizational charts of what we ideally wanted the company to be as it grew. And so we just kind of started to fill that in as we went. I think that, again, having a team, for me, there were quite a few times where we hired much earlier than we needed to, and it was a strain on resources. But I had many other times where we waited too long to hire that caused so many problems that for me, I decided I'd rather spend some money and then find the revenue later than deal with having to quickly hire somebody to cover all of the revenue I just sold.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So can you elaborate a little more on, we're talking about growth versus scaling. When you grew your business, can you tell me a little bit about some of the areas where your business suffered? And I don't mean suffer like suffering, but I mean just
there was a little bit of that.
Yeah, maybe there was about some of the ways your business suffered when you turned to more growth tactic versus scaling tactic.
Yeah. So obviously the businesses change as they grow. Needs change. Operating a $500,000 business is completely different than $1 million business, which is pretty different from a $1.5 million business. And what you need to do is keep up with the changes in processes as you scale. And that is something that did fall to the wayside a few times, where we had to make a change in the process because now there's 10 people involved rather than 2. And the process wasn't updated. And then it made things a little bit more, hairy. Maybe some things fell through the cracks because the process wasn't as well documented. That's probably the biggest thing that we found, is that if we did not keep on top of the changing, processes and the changing workflows, that it did cause more problems, because whereas maybe Holly and I meet regularly, and if there was a change, both Holly and I knew about it. Well, now it's not just me and Holly. Now it's me, Holly, and 8 other people that also need to be looped in on what we're doing. And so that would be my biggest thing, is you really need processes to scale. If you don't have processes, you can grow, but you can't scale. And as you're scaling, you will need to refine those processes and update them as you go.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I feel like a lack of organized processes can really make a lot fall through the cracks, especially when you have as many clients as you do.
Yeah, that's a big part. That and communication. Making sure, again, if you have a process on who is supposed to respond to emails if you have a shared inbox, you don't want, client communication to fall through the cracks. There was definitely a drop in quality for a while because we had to hire bookkeepers faster than we normally would have. And some of the bookkeepers that came on, they just weren't as skilled as we thought that they were going to be. And that was a little bit difficult for a period of time. So again, that's where we go into, I try to proactively hire bookkeepers now rather than hire them in a panic trying to just get accounts covered, because that caused a lot of issues, fixing their mistakes.
When scaling your business and kind of going through some uncomfortable pain points, what are some of the ways that you kind of were able to optimize the experience for your clients or for onboarding while still scaling your company?
I don't understand that question at all.
So, okay. Like, you're scaling your business. It's uncomfortable. You just said you had some issues with quality control. How were you still able to make it a good experience for your clients and for even new clients, even though you were going through an uncomfortable period of growth?
Yeah, I think we were just honest with them. I think it was very obvious to everybody that we were currently working with that we were going through that. And so we were just very upfront and honest about it. And I think, again, everything that we do is customer service. So for us, it was really just being transparent and just getting back to them as quickly as possible and always just doing our best. And I think they saw that. And for the new clients coming on board, I will say, one of the processes that fell through the cracks was onboarding. I had a few clients that, that started to onboard that decided not to. Messed that up because some things fell through the cracks. But we took that and we got better, and we put better processes in place to make sure that didn't happen. And so again, the same thing was just managing expectations, right? Setting the expectations, managing their expectations, and letting them know. And if you're upfront with people about what the experience is going to be, whether they're a current client or they're onboarding as a new client, they're going to be, much more acceptable of any potential bumps in the road. Like if you tell them, hey, right now I'm onboarding 8,000 people, there's going to be some bumps in the road. Okay, they're going to expect it. But if you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do everything and it's going to be done in 5 minutes and it's not, then you just you let them down.
Mm-hmm. So and part of the reason why I asked this question is because I'm not a business owner, but when it comes to kind of scaling my workload in my life, I know that when I don't have a process down, things fall through the cracks. And I forget to answer emails, or I'll forget to call somebody back, or I'll forget that I had a doctor's appointment or something of that nature. And it's like, it kind of kicks you in the ass a little bit, because you're like, oh my God, how can I handle all of this? I'm forgetting to do this and I dropped the ball here. And so it's kind of like you've got all these balls up in the air and you're like, okay, what do I catch first? And I think that's a big issue when it comes that I think it's a big pain point when people are scaling their business. It's like you've got all the balls in the air and you're like, okay, which one do I catch first?
That is really important. And I think we're going to talk about this in a couple of episodes. So if you guys haven't subscribed, subscribe. But we're going to swing back to Brooke Swan's talk at BKX. And she talked about prioritizing tasks because that was a lot of it. A lot of what she spoke to is a lot of what I do, time blocking and prioritization, right? There's only so much you can do in a day. Prioritize it and just work through it. I just told Hannah earlier, I have 4 things to do today and I did 3 of them. And that might just be what I do today. Sometimes, I'll get to 4 and be like, all right, what's next? I'll take some other things. And then other days I'm like, all right, I got 4, I'm done. Everyone get away from me. Prioritization and knowing what you need to do. So get it down on paper, get it out of your brain. Your brain is useless. I know mine is.
Yeah. It's funny because I think one of the big things that when I was kind of doing some research for this episode, a lot of when it's the argument of growth versus scaling, a good way to put it is that growth is when you have an increase in revenue, but you also are spending more money on resources that you need. And then scaling is when your revenue is increasing, but you can keep costs down. And I think that's just one kind of aspect of growth versus scaling. But what are some ways that you keep costs down when scaling your business?
That is such a good question. When you explained it like that, the way that I see that is like growth is like you're getting an increase in sales, but there's like you're having to put out all the fires around you, so it's more expensive. But like scaling, it's like you're like, nothing's on fire. That's how I feel it when I have like an image of like Hannah putting a fire out.
It's probably something I've done, to be fair.
Probably. How do we keep costs down? That is such a good question. I think again, when you're panic hiring, you're not going, first of all, you might not be hiring the right candidate. You might not take as much time to make sure that they're the right candidate. And attrition is really expensive. So I think the biggest thing, again, comes down to people, which is when you're panic hiring, you're going to make a lot more mistakes. Whereas if you're doing your growth intentionally, if you're scaling intentionally, and you know that when you need to make a hire and for what position and what marker is going to be that decision, and you have a steady lead of recruits coming in and out, you're always hiring, you're always interviewing, you're going to find a better candidate that will most likely stay with you longer.
Yeah. That's
so for
panic hiring. Oof.
Yeah, I have to say again, tons of issues for me have always stemmed from the panic hiring.
Well, I think everybody has their pain point because, you get to a place in your business where you're kind of like, oh shit, this is more than I can handle. So let me hire somebody really quick. And that is when the panic hire comes back to bite you in the ass, is when you are like hiring out of necessity and let me panic basically of, oh my God, I can't do this. When really, I think the alternative solution to that problem is changing a process, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's like similar with panic hiring is like, if you have problems and you're throwing money at it, that's growth.
That's growth.
Like, right. Like,
boom,
and I've done
baby.
It. I've done it. I like, just give them more money. I don't know.
That's
just
growth.
Pay them.
When you are
baby.
pissing away money to fix your company, that's growth. That is not scaling.
And it's not going to be the end of the world. We've all done it and it'll get you through. It's just not the best way to do it.
Well,
right?
It's not the sustainable way to do it.
It's not sustainable. That's for sure.
We hope this episode has been informative and a good kind of first step into our Scaling Your Business series. We have several different episodes that we're going to just really take a lot of deep dives into different kind of subcategories of scaling your business and different pain points that you might experience and how to get started on scaling. If you did take a shot every time I said scaling, please call 911. But if you do have comments, questions, tips, concerns, or you just want to talk to us, please shoot us an email at success@ilovebookkeeping.com. Again, that is success@ilovebookkeeping.com. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast, out every Tuesday and Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends. We're gonna